welcome to the 0.5.10 Thrive release live stream, Thrive stream, whatever you want to call it. We just released a new version of Thrive that should be available to play on Steam or if you want, or on the launcher now. And we're going to be discussing the new features in this live stream, and also taking questions, some of which were posted in the forum beforehand as priority questions, some of which we'll take from the stream chat eventually. So first, I guess we'll introduce everyone who's here. We're a bit thin on the ground today because not many people could make this time slot in the end. But first, I guess we have Buckley.
Hi, I'm Buckley. I'm the team lead of the design team. I am responsible for all your grievances and complaints about the current state of balance.
Okay, and then we have Hiralainen.
Hello, I'm the programming team lead, and I do a lot of the programming as well as reviewing other people's work and helping them get features finished in time for a release.
And then there's me. Hi, I'm Oliver. I was originally the head of the music stuff, but I branched into other things, and recently I've mostly been doing programming. So those are the people we have now. We may have other people turning up later, but we'll see. So I believe our first port of call will be going over the new features in the new release. Should I do that, or Buckley or Hiralainen, you want to speak for a bit? I don't mind.
Well, if you're keen on a break, I suppose I can take over from here.
Yeah.
So this is 0.5.10. It's not quite as substantial as our previous update, but it's still got quite a few good and big features waiting for us. The biggest of which is going to be the mucilage agent and associated parts, the jet, as well as the new and improved Auto Evo exploration tool, which for those of you who are into evolution speculative evolution, that's going to be a big thing because you can create a whole world and track the lineage of every species that it develops. Other than that, we have some nice big bug fixes, and also what else did we have? I feel like I forget.
Did you mention the revamp of reproduction?
Yeah, there we go. That's what I was forgetting.
In terms of general gameplay, that's probably the biggest of all.
Yes, so those of you who have already played the latest version, they've already noticed a significant difference in how you reproduce. Instead of just simply gathering compounds and filling up and instantly hitting that button, you now have to wait for it to actually be processed by your organism as it slowly grows over time. Even if you do not gather compounds, you still slowly accumulate them through passive. The word stuck to me, or stuck onto my tongue, but yes, you passively gain compounds. By acquiring them the old-fashioned way, you double the rate at which you reproduce. A huge change to the pacing of the game.
The idea is that you can now, it's twofold. You can now play as a sessile organism, such as a plant, because you will gradually collect ammonia and phosphates just by not doing anything, which was a barrier to that before, which meant you couldn't reproduce. And it's also kind of a safety net if you're playing and you can't find either ammonia or phosphates and you start to die. You won't have that as often in the new version because you'll just be constantly collecting it from the environment. But of course, if you do find it manually in clouds, it will speed things up. So there is still an incentive there. And then we've got, a few other bug fixes, small changes and additions. But you can read all of those on the patch notes in the dev blog.
For those of you who really like sharing your worlds, we now show the seed in the editor. So that makes sharing it a lot easier.
Yes, that's true. That was a fix I made very quickly after the last release because I forgot to add it. Yes, yeah. I believe that's all the features.
Yep. All in all, not a huge change, but it's definitely a lot of nice big features. step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, I think that time-based reproduction is something that people have been asking for a while, and while we're still not sure whether it's the true path forward, it will at least show what is possible, and you can always turn it off in the new game settings. Right. So if we've gone through all the new features, I suppose we should start on the questions from the community forum. For future reference, if you wish to ask a priority question, you can head on over to the community forum before the next releases live stream and post in the thread that will be posted for that. And there is even a priority thread for people who are Patreon supporters. So that's one extra reason to join on Patreon. So the very first question we have in the Patreon questions, I guess I'll just start. Will the color of a photosynthetic-based species matter later on when planet or star generation becomes an option in the new game settings, or how will that be approached? Does anyone want to jump in with an answer here?
Well, I suppose I can. So, as we all know, photosynthesis does depend largely on the available spectra of light. As of now, Thrive does not have any way of calculating what kind of sunlight hits your organism, so for some time now it probably won't matter too much. Later on, it remains a bit in question on if we're going to have it depend on the thylakoids and chloroplasts themselves, or if you can just change the color of your cells to kind of blanket adapt them to that change.
There's
So
also, oh, sorry.
it's kind of up in the air right now as to how exactly you'll go around doing it if we do it at all. I mean, for the most part, I feel it might be a bit of a unnecessary amount of complexity for something that's mostly going to be uniform throughout all life on your planet. If purple turns out to be the best color for photosynthesis, then yeah, most organisms are just going to end up purple. We'll just have to wait and see. What were you going to say, Oliver?
I was just about to say, I remember us having a conversation recently about organism colors and how those can influence how species evolve. And the obvious one is currently is green microbes would be better at photosynthesis. But then we would also need other options for other colors. Otherwise, the auto evo would create a world full of only green things.
Yeah, you know what? That does remind me. Camouflage and the likes could be something that would actually encourage other colors.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I remember someone suggesting that what if the chloroplasts have a different color slider, so you can be whatever color you want, but chloroplasts can be a different color, so maybe that would keep everyone happy, but of course that's much more complex feature to make.
It's a bit
Yeah,
more of a hassle to work with as a player as well.
Okay, I feel like we've answered that question then. Next one from Doom Lightning. Are there plans to introduce genes into the game? I'm going to say no, because that's just a level of complexity that's beyond what we're trying to go for. Does anyone else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have the same opinion, but that I think the level that each species is like the unit that works with evolution in Thrive is about right in terms of how computationally expensive things get.
I feel like the closest we'll have to genetics and the likes is probably just going to be phenotypes, like having different like casts of an organism, and that itself might be a bit far off. Other than that, I like to think that one of the benefits of sexual reproduction would allow for differentiation between different individuals of your species. Like some might be just a little stronger than others, some might be a little bigger, etc. Just like
Yeah, that's a good point.
just a random perk that some individuals might have.
I mean, we do kind of have a genetic code in the game already, and that's just the data defining a species. So I think the difference would be if the player can just edit it themselves. That would probably be too much. It's my opinion.
Yeah, genetic code is JSON based in Thrive world.
Yeah, it's not DNA, it's JSON.
Incredible.
Is there something you want to add to the game but can't, or have given up on it? Shall we each give an answer to this one, I suppose? Buckley, do you want to go first?
Well, there's nothing really that I'd say that I'd give up on. Closest I can get really to is just like dropping something because I just can't think of any solution for implementing it. Like bioluminescence, for example. I just have no good idea of how to best implement it, but I still want it, so it's kind of just sitting on my to-do list gathering dust. Though now that I think about it, I think the closest to giving up on something would be the shoot. I can't think of the name. You know, when you absorb the cell and it becomes an organelle. Endosymbiosis, yes.
That's the one.
Yes. I had these really grand ideas of organelle customization and such, but I feel like that would just be too much complexity, and I feel like Hiralainen would want to strangle me, and yeah, so best left behind that. Well, a smaller form of it might come about someday.
Yeah, we're still planning to some extent. You know, you need to unlock some organelles by engulfing other species that have the basic forms of those organelles, or something along those lines. But having an entire extra organism inside you as an extra organelle just doesn't work with the current system. Hiralainen, do you have anything you want to mention about a thing you want to add to the game but can't, or have given up?
I don't think I really have those. Like before I actually even like really start to think about any feature as a programmer, I think about the complexity already at that point. So I probably discard a ton of ideas already before even like realizing, and because I think it would be so difficult to fit into the game's code.
One thing, I guess my answer to this, there was a concept a long time ago for being able to secrete calcium into the environment, and then the calcium solidifying into just objects, depending on how the clouds form. And I've since realized that, you know, implementing that would be nigh on impossible, because you'd have to have some, you know, a cloud simulation that dynamically generates bits of calcium that stick together. And it feels like that would be a nightmare, even if it's even possible. So that's, you know, that's what came to mind for me when I saw that question. Right, next question. Regarding the atmospheric pressure bar, is there a plan to use it in the microbial phase, or is it reserved for the multicellular phase? I think, you know, with like everything with the environmental things, there are plans for it to change across different biomes and change dynamically across the course of a game as well. I'm not entirely sure how pressure would actually influence how cells in a given patch are designed. If anyone wants to chime in with suggestions there.
As far as I understand, it's largely negligible for cells.
Wasn't there some idea about the environmental tolerances or something going to do?
Yes,
with the
but that was
pressure?
more for like salinity, radiation, forgetting something.
Heat.
Heat, yes, heat, and yeah, oxygen, yes. But pressure alone we kind of neglect because it's when you're something already largely made of water, there's not too big of an issue. with pressure.
So yeah, I think the answer to that question is it probably will change in the microbial stage eventually, but it won't actually have much effect on gameplay, if any.
It will in later stages, though, certainly.
Yes, definitely. Single-celled creatures are unable to see without a special organ. I assume they mean organelle. And I feel that the senses in this matter are not felt enough. Is there a plan to expand on this issue in the microbial phase, as the evidence is limited to these organelles and following the chemoreceptor organelle or the specialization of restraints to detect oscillation? I think what they're trying to, the gist of what they've said here is, are there plans to restrict the player's senses in the microbe stage until they develop certain organelles?
Ooh, that's always a hard question to answer.
Yeah, we had a discussion about this recently. I can't remember what the conclusion was.
Yeah, all I can say is depriving the player of senses that they themselves possess is a very dicey way to manage the gameplay. So it's something we'll have to be careful about and creative with working around.
I think with the day-night cycle, which has been mostly implemented now but didn't make it for this release, sadly, there was one disagreement over whether whether the player should be able to see the light level changing in the patch until they develop photosynthesis,
Right.
because there would be no reason for them to need it. But the overwhelming majority of the vote on that was that the player should see the light level changing, which I think was the right decision. And unless there are any more comments, I think that's the Patreon priority questions done, and we can move on to the other questions posted on the forum. So,
Okay, should be on stream now.
The first of the actual questions in the question thread: how is the progress on planet generation? Unfortunately, I believe the devs involved with that are not here at the moment, so I don't think we can give a very accurate answer.
Yeah, all I can say is that we developers or other developers have not been shown any progress recently, so nothing to share on that.
Still planned some progress, but nothing close to making it into the game yet. I think it's a summary. Will it be possible for players to go down stages? So, for instance, from multicellular to microbe instead of the other way around? I don't really have an opinion on this. Does anyone have thoughts?
I think it's unnecessarily complex to program this kind of feature, so
Probably not.
Well, I think that's a resounding no to that question. Do we know of any? It would need to be based on a scientific example. So, does anyone? It's probably a long shot, but does anyone know of any examples of evolution where a multicellular creature became a unicellular creature again?
Not a unicellular creature. I know there's many species that have evolved into very simplistic forms, but not to the point where they decaying like a single cell or anything.
Yeah, I'll wait to see whether anyone posts an example in the chat. But otherwise, we'll move on. What do we plan to add in the next update? I expect Hiralainen probably has some thoughts on this.
Well, next thing I'll do is I'm going to make the game much more bulletproof against bad mods that people report that the new version doesn't work when in fact they have mods installed that break the version. So that's the first thing I'm going to do.
Yes, that's something I should mention. If you're starting the game in the newest version and it's just failing to open, delete all the mods from the mod folder, and that might fix it if there were incompatible mods.
If that doesn't fix it, you can also revert the version to the previous version. That'll allow you to open it and deactivate the mods.
Yes, true. I think hopefully we'll get the day-night cycle into the next update because that was close, and I'm going to try and help with getting that over the finish line.
I'm counting on it personally. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, what were you saying?
I said I'm counting on it personally.
And one other, a few other things I wanted to add was fossilization, which I just didn't get time to finish for this update, which is where you are able to save creatures that you or AutoEvo have created in the environment and then view them later. This requires a rudimentary implementation of the Thrivepedia, which is the in-game content encyclopedia featuring, I don't know, lots of different things about the game. So that will be in there too, with hopefully the evolutionary tree that is now in the AutoEvo exploring tool, also visible from the game if you go into the right menu. So that's most of what I hope to add for the next release. And I'm sure there'll be other things that people who come along add as well. If you want to add things to the next release, the team is open source. You are free to apply to join the team if you have skills in game development anywhere. And we would be very happy to have you. And there we go. That's the mandated plug for joining the team.
Suppose now is a good time that we do have a more structured release roadmap now. With lots of things, let's see, 0.6.x says a lot of things detailing the part unlocking and upgrade specialization systems.
Yes, that's true. If you look on the wiki, you will now find a fully featured roadmap for the rest of the microbe stage. I'll add a link to that in the YouTube chat.
Post joining the team link.
Okay.
And I'll also mention that even though the next version is I think we'll call it 0.6, the first of those releases to close out the year as we have had pretty good progress. So I think we can call it that and say that we'll start working on the roadmap next. But I was thinking that for the next release that is in December, we still will follow the approach that people can work on whatever they want, and for the first release next year, then I'll put together a release from the roadmap, and we'll see if that motivates people to work on those specific things. But for next release, I think we'll still go one more release where I don't fill the release with any specific feature goals to reach.
Yeah, so I think in answer to the question of what we'll plan in the next update, look in the roadmap, but it's not guaranteed that any of those will be in the next update.
I'll just mention one other thing is that I really want to get the launcher 2.0 done, so I'm kind of thinking that I'll focus quite a lot of effort on that, especially as the auto restart, if the mods are bad, will require launcher changes in order to work, because if Thrive crashes like that, then the launcher will need to relaunch the game to make it a bit nicer to the user.
And for reference, for those who aren't aware, Launcher 2.0 refers to the launcher remade in a different framework.
Different programming language, different framework, different everything.
Yeah, so hopefully a bit more maintainable for the future and nicer to look at if it's designed well.
Well, no one showed me a redesign of the launcher, so I'm going with a similar visual look than before. But I finally gotten tired of the weekly emails from GitHub that there are vulnerable libraries used in the launcher. seems a bit of a dead-end technology because the Electron developers don't want to natively support modern JavaScript libraries.
Right. Should we move on to the next question? It seems likely that we will not be seeing macroscopic gameplay for quite some time. That's not true because it's now in the current release, and I think we forgot to mention it earlier. But it's very basic gameplay. It's literally just swimming around a bit, and there's a rock. But it's progress. In the previous release, it was literally just the macroscopic editor, whereas this release now updates the spawn system and some related things to allow for 3D creatures. But yes, the question itself, what expectations should we have for the eventual implementation of the macroscopic gameplay?
It's going
Buckley,
to
do you have
be
ideas?
just balls for a really long time. Probably until we officially move on to working on that stage, it will be just meta balls with really basic movement. Because I want to make the later prototypes as well to show the overall game structure instead of getting stuck in one stage.
My personal first on my to-do list is to start working on plans for diet in the macroscopic stage. So basically sources of food that they carried over from the previous stages, like clouds of microbes that you can eat from, as well as some other sources aside from other organisms. And how exactly that'll work.
Yeah, I think the overall answer is that full implementation is not going to happen for a while. As Hirolainen said, there will be prototypes for other stages first and a fully fleshed out microbe stage first. But there are some ideas in the works. Next question. What would you do if a non-Lorc feature, Lorc meaning life as we know it, was discovered in real life within the late game development in which multicellular stage was quite fleshed out? The Lorc toggle, for those unaware, is a button that you press at in the new game settings to determine whether the parts and abilities in the game are only those that we've actually observed in nature and not speculative ones like thermosynthesis. So my read of this question is like, what happens if it turns out we find something in the real world that can thermosynthesize? And my answer to that is, well, it's very easy to just change something from being non-Lorc to Lorc in the game. It's just removing an if statement. I mean, that's the current situation for it, but it may get more complicated if they diverge further in the future.
I mean, as long as we have the toggle option in the new game settings, then we'll anyway need to make sure that the game works with. Or did you mean that if we switch one feature from non-Lorc to Lorc, then something else might break? That's possible, but I mean, we'll just switch that feature over and then wait for the crash reports to come in and then fix those as well.
I'm not talking more as in crash reports. I'm meaning like the balancing of it could be thrown off slightly. If there's some feature that's only meant to work with a particular other feature set and is suddenly taken over into the...
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But anyway, the game balance is anyway not the best most of the time, so I don't see a problem with just flicking that or like picking up that one feature and putting it in the other category, then seeing what else we need to do.
Yeah, if the discovery of thermosynthesis were to happen now, it would be effortless, basically, to make it work as a Lork feature. If it were to happen later in the game, when we've actually got a more solid balancing of the rest, then it may be a more complicated question. Next question. If you finish the microbe stage with photosynthesizing cells, will you be forced to play as a plant from the macroscopic stage and onwards?
I'd say the more you specialize, the harder it'll be to transition to another state of being, but not entirely possible so long as you're just capable of change.
Yeah, I think my general feelings are similar. I don't want to, lock anyone out of anything, but it feels like once they make a decision early in the game, they should that decision should have an effect on the rest of the game. A bit like spores, herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, leading to different lifestyles later on in the game. But hopefully a bit more dynamic than that. Next question. Will it be possible to go onto land in the multicellular stage?
Yes, in the macroscopic stage, but the early one cells are still reliant on the nature of their environment.
Well, someone is going to bring up some microbes that we find in soil today, and that we need to do that.
Yeah,
but
that is true.
But I mean, I'd say this is one of those features that we'll put on the pile of if someone really wants it, they can implement it themselves or wait multiple decades for the other parts of the game to be finished first.
Yeah, I think that's my feeling as well. Next question. How long will it be before EA buys Revolutionary Games? Hopefully never.
Well, we can't sell anyway. Or, well, it would be pretty difficult to sell.
Because due to the association situation, I guess.
Yeah, an association is a thing that can have only natural people as members, so no corporations can be members, and also there's no stock or anything like that, so we couldn't sell anything except I guess we could change the association rules with a majority vote to allow us to sell all the rights the association has to thrive, but I hope that doesn't happen. As long as we have enough Thrive fans as association members, people who want Thrive to succeed will have the most of the votes.
So yes, in answer to that question, most likely never.
Yeah,
that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, technically somewhat possible, but I wouldn't see that in any way as realistic thing. It's much more likely that some random indie game studio that is an actual corporation that has sellable stock gets bought by EA.
Okay, moving on from that. Is internal parasitism I realized I've never said parasitism out loud before. But is internal parasitism planned? I assume that's living inside another creature as a parasite. And my reaction to that is probably, but it's one of those things that's, it may happen if someone really wants it, but it's not going to be in the core gameplay.
Yeah, and this is like even more difficult than land microbes because this needs probably entirely different gameplay mechanics to really make sense. So this is not like adding a few new environment adaptations to the editor and some patch map new types, but this is like more more of a alternative mode, just like plants. Or should I say macroscopic plants?
Next question is, why did you decide to abandon the idea of a bacterial mat biome? I don't remember that discussion happening. Does anyone here remember that?
Well, I think it wasn't really abandoned, but no one wanted to like really write down what that would mean and start thinking about how to add that to the game, because it would be difficult, because you need to create those biomes only after there are suitable species that can create that environment. Well, I guess that in multicellular states we need to anyway do that kind of thing, so maybe someone will backport that feature to the microbe states as well, but not really anything that's on any of the developers' mind, really, that feature. So another one of those that might get done.
I feel like that's going to be our answer to a lot of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I should
always.
have like some kind of rubber stamp or something, that, or a button that I can press that automatically types out that response and then use it.
Gotta
everywhere.
get yourself a soundboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
Right. Do you have a concept of how the later or 3D multi-cell stage combat will work? Do we have a concept? I don't know.
There's been some brief concepts long ago.
Yeah, some rough ideas that do we want to model individual organ damage and will there be blood and stuff like that, but like nothing really concrete has been decided on that. That's basically the case for all of the later stages, that there's probably been some kind of discussion about most things, but nothing has been like really decided or finalized design wise.
Yep, we'll have it be revisited someday.
Right. Are we moving on to the next question? Which is, how many more new organelles do you plan to add? So which are we definitely planning to add? There's definitely going to be some kind of radio trough organelle, right?
Yeah, and we literally have the bioluminescence or vacuole still in the game.
Yes, we just have to figure out how it works.
We have the roadmap at least now. So I think there's 2 or 3 new organelles on the roadmap, so those are like the only really planned ones. And of course, if someone wants to add other random stuff like the slime jets, they are free to do so.
Let me have a look. There's no mention of a specific. Well, there is an entire appendix of possible organelles and other mutations on the wiki. It's largely very outdated, but it does have some in there that we're still probably going to add. So I might as well post this in the chat. But of course, bear strongly in mind that this list is very, very old, and most of these probably won't make it into the game. But it's a nice selection of options if we do want more.
I have considered the addition of organelles that have more bearing in later stages, such as myofibrils, which would basically become your muscle cells later on, but I'm not sure if we really want to go for the extent of designing muscle cells and all that, so it's still up in the air.
I mean, I think like neurons and muscle cells would be the first specialized types I would like to add to the prototypes. So if we add something, then those 2 are, I think, most likely candidates.
Noted. I'll put that in my to-do list.
I actually, like a couple of months ago, tried to get the art team to make models for those, but I was unsuccessful.
Yeah, we have had a slowdown in the art team in particular recently, as people have had real life things to attend to.
Yeah,
So-
and the problem with the art team is that for like multiple years we don't need anything, and then all of a sudden we need one new organelle this week, and then in a few weeks we need like 3 more. And we haven't retained any of the graphics people to do that.
Moving on to the next person's questions. Sorry. How freeform do you think the later editors will be? Does anyone have an opinion on that? Because I feel like I have no idea.
That's basically the biggest struggle with the editors. It's going to be a constant fight in balancing between possibility and freedom and easy usability and understanding.
Yeah, if we take the current prototype as a base, I'd say that it's currently too fiddly to use. Like we need some kind of ridge snapping system or something to not have the balls be all unevenly placed.
Something a bit akin to the hex editor in the current cell stage. Yeah, I feel like this is something that doesn't have a solid answer once again. Like in the aware stage, will you use a growth editor like the one I suggested, or will you use a different type of editor? I'm not familiar with what this question is referring to by a growth editor. Has anyone seen what they've mentioned elsewhere?
I've probably skimmed that post, but cannot like really remember. I think initially all of the, like the growth stages or stuff like that is just not going to be added because it's not necessary to add that complexity in the first version. So
I feel like the rest of the questions in this person's post are very much we don't really know yet, and any answer we give will be at best.
Well, the field of view thing
Speculative.
is that I think we'll try having a third-person camera initially. If some people want something else, then we can maybe make other options. But that answers the field of view thing that we
I have
won't be like tying the features seeing ability to the camera that much. Kind of similarly to how in the micro stage the screen is not entirely black all the time.
I have considered the possibility of having a wider range of view, basically adjusting a sort of detection range that would allow you to better sense things that are hiding from you and such. Like sort of like radar, but you would only see radar blips on things that are in your creature's field of view.
Okay, so moving on to some other questions that we can hopefully give more detailed answers to. This one, why 0.5.10 and not 0.6.0? I guess because we decided there wasn't really enough in this release to warrant a complete a change in the major version number.
Well, if I remember right, maybe the roadmap was not finished yet or something like that before the release was planned. And anyway, I wanted to show all of the fans that we can use double numbers if we want to, or if we need to put more releases between other major release number ranges, so we can do that. Just because some people were counting how many smaller releases there are between the big numbers, so I decided to mess with those people a bit.
Yeah, that is a good point actually. the sub release numbers don't have any. They're not. There's not a known number of them. So they in any software that you might find, they will often have 0.5.160 or something. There's no limit to the numbers. It's just whenever we feel that we have reached a certain milestone, which have now been laid out more specifically in the release roadmap.
Yeah, in the future we can correct releases to have a higher number once all the features that should be done are done.
And the next question, are the environmental and compound buttons icons, the icons for the environmental and compound buttons, sorry, are they temporary? Probably, because it would be nice to have like actual icons representing the environmental conditions and the compound panel. We just haven't had those from the art team.
Well, I'll say that temporary is probably in quotes because I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago when the previous compound icon was made. So this change took like 3 years to happen. So maybe in 3 years we'll have icons for those.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it really occurred to anyone that it was a temporary icon until we added the E beside it.
Yeah, now that I think about it, like it does add translation difficulties if, for instance, environment or compounds don't start with the same letter as they do in English.
Yeah, I think those are
just
actually
affect-
even images, so you cannot translate those anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. We just wouldn't be able to translate these. So yeah, I feel like they probably are temporary, and now there are 2 of them. It might draw more attention to that fact, and hopefully someone can make some better icons, because we've had trouble making icons for things this release. I remember with the slime jet. How will plant gameplay work at nighttime? We can actually give a good answer for this. You just won't. Photosynthesis just won't work if there's no light. So you'll be relying on the stored compounds that you've generated during the day, or any that you might be able to generate through means other than photosynthesis.
It's a test of endurance. Means you
It
better
is.
focus on some storage.
It does make it very hard to program it for auto-evo calculations, as we found out. But from a gameplay perspective, that's how it will work. The idea is that you gather enough compounds to survive the night. A bit like, I guess, a survival game, maybe. On to the next question, which is a few posts down. Right now, budding is the only allowed form of reproduction for multicellular organisms. How will sexual reproduction work? How will the gameplay loop in the environment, etc., be like for the player? I don't personally know anything about this, but there is currently a drop-down in the prototype editor for selecting the reproduction mechanism, although currently the only option is budding, which is a form of asexual reproduction. So there will be planned other methods, but I don't know what those the details of those. Does anyone have any ideas?
I'm going to just say the bare minimum that player will need to find another member of their species in order to enter the editor and reproduce, so that adds some complexity to the gameplay loop, but anything other than that I haven't really considered. Do we want to track the sex of the spawned in creatures and you need to find the right type to reproduce, or do we add a mate calling button, or is that going to be handled, for example, by the signaling agent or something like that?
I've personally considered, of course, the other means of reproduction like eggs, live birth, and all that stuff.
Also, I think maybe asexual reproduction will be the next one to be added next to budding, so it would be kind of like an offspring instead of a small bud. Because I put in the macroscopic prototype, I put asexual reproduction as the default and the only option there, so that kind of ties those prototypes together a bit.
Yeah, we have some ideas, but we need to think a bit more deeply about them. And the next question, will the evolutionary tree, which is now in the Auto Evo exploring tool, be implemented into the main game? And the answer is yes. I'm going to try and do that for the next release as part of the very bare bones Thrivepedia that will be there. So look forward to that, hopefully. And then I believe the final question we have in this thread is a long list of things that someone is asking when and if they will be added.
I think we'll go rapid fire through these, so if people have or something catches your eye that you think is going to happen
if
soon,
it's okay with you two, I'm just going to give, if I know the answer to one, I'll just say it and move on, or I'll leave it open to other people. So thermal gradient lines and thermoreceptor overhaul. Yes, I want to do that at some point eventually. Straw or proboscis pilus?
maybe upgrade system kind of thing.
It was mentioned in the original drafts of the upgrade system alongside the toxic pilus.
Yeah, the toxic pilots is the next one. So that may be an upgrade for the pilus once we have the organelle upgrading system in place. A vacuole or cilia for pulling water in and engulfing cells from a distance. Yes, that is there, but we just don't have the mechanism for upgrading organelles. So it has actually been programmed, it's just not been added to the main branch.
Well, it was programmed, but the graphics looked so bad that it's currently disabled.
So, but yes, it is planned. Pneumoticist, how do we pronounce it, to deliver toxins or to pull back from engulfment like a harpoon.
I have gone through plans for that several times, and Tiktaalik has also made a model for it and is still trying to figure out the best way to do that. It's my personal plans for it was to basically replace the current mechanism of firing toxins with firing an anaticist, or in this case, it would actually be a synaticist, which is a part of the cell, whereas an anaticist is the cell itself.
Mucilage, we still can't figure out the pronunciation, to slow cells caught in it. Yes, that's already in this game. It was in this release. And related to that, microbial jet for quick bursts of speed. Yes, that was in this release. I'm suddenly realizing I do not know how to pronounce anything. Pellicle or mucocyst shielding. I'm assuming that's a type of membrane.
I know Deuce has been particularly inclined with the pellicles, so it's a possibility. It's basically like a hard plating on a cell.
Yeah, we had that as an example of an archetype in the combat system, didn't we? As kind of a shield.
Indeed.
Archetype. So possible and probable. Attaching to a surface with an organelle. Probably once we have surfaces of that are more.
Untrusted Life has been obsessing over that for the past month or two.
So probable. Different salt levels and contractive vacuole. Are those related?
Yep.
I don't know.
A contractile vacuole is basically for maintaining osmotic pressure within an organism. Usually a big difference usually a big thing with a large amount of salinity, as with more salt on the inside or outside, it leads to a bigger, I guess, osmotic pressure between the interior and exterior of the cell. Being unable to maintain that will either lead to crenation, when a cell basically dries up and shrivels, or I can't remember the right word, lysis, which means the cell explodes. either due to too much or too little salt in the interior or exterior. And the contractile vacuoles are basically the part that maintains that balance. So yeah, that'd be part of the environmental tolerance features.
Calcium carbonates not being viable in low pH environments. I mean, we don't have calcium carbonates in the game at all yet, and
Yes, we do.
there's no. Do we?
Yes, it's the membrane.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose it is. I was thinking they meant as a compound, but not being viable in low pH environments, I would assume again related to the environmental tolerances rework. Hydrofluoric acid to engulf cells covered with silica.
I think this
suppose
was
it's
also
possible.
added. Or was it?
Right now silica is just engulfable no matter what.
Ah, okay. So maybe someone will adjust the engulfing and
I tried looking into it a while back when I was first designing all the diet and stuff, and I could not find any way for microbial organisms to actually break through or digest a calcium carbonate, or my bad, a silicate strustule, because it's just glass. So the best option they had was just by breaking it up physically, or just digesting the organism through it just by engulfing it completely.
The next one, metallic tissues and metallic cell wall.
No.
There we go, that was easy. A benefit to evolving bioluminescence, such as communication. Probably. We've had suggestions of it being like a trap to ensnare other creatures, but then that begs the question of what the AI could do with it, since the player should always know to stay away from them. So I think we definitely want it in the game eventually. We just need to figure out exactly what it does. Radioactive oceans and radioplasts and methane oceans. I mean, radiotroph gameplay is planned at some point, but I don't exactly know the details of that, as in, is the entire ocean going to be radioactive?
I mean, it's on the roadmap and there's already been some art about radioactive rocks, so it would be like specific rocks that you need to hug to get energy.
Temporary and permanent endosymbiosis. I feel like we've gone over this already, but there would be a simple version where you could unlock organelles by doing that, but there would not be the complex version of completely engulfing a creature to be your a custom organelle, I'll say. Colony between different species of cells, like a chimera or a symbiote.
Endosymbiosis, yes. Not so much a colony between different species. Or did I say endosymbiosis? I just meant symbiosis, my bad.
It was a previous question, so I was a bit confused.
My bad. No, just
No
symbiosis in general I would like to see, but it's going to need a lot of careful planning and consideration.
The real hope for it is that it would be something emergent. It wouldn't be something we program for definite in there. But that's going to be very tricky to add. So we'll see. Organelle update systems. Yes. Stealing organelles from other cells.
Probably no.
Actually, kind of cool. That's how it works when you're like one of those organisms that steals chloroplasts from this algae you eat. But they kind of need to have a sort of specialized vacuole that allows you to temporarily use certain organelles.
Seems like a really specific feature that takes quite a bit of programming to do so. Well,
fair.
Well, if someone wants to program that, then I guess we'll have it.
It'd be a side feature.
So possible. We're nearly at the end. Taking plasmids from engulfed cells or the environment.
I had vague memories of designing around plasmids as a sort of exploratory reward system that would give you temporary discounts on certain parts. So that's a possibility.
Viruses, I feel like we've spoken about these a lot, and the general opinion is probably not. Different reproduction types, spoken about already. Tissue editor, when you become 3D.
That's quite literally like the plan.
Yes, that is a definite, assuming we get to that point.
I mean, I want to use
oxidation-
the cell editor as the tissue editor, so we save on working on an extra editor and can do something else with the development time instead.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. I just see it as one of the same personally. Not bad.
And then we have oxygenation events, acidification events, snowball earth, algal blooms, blah blah blah. So generally, I think they mean like extinction events, which yes, are planned for the game at some point. How small can an electric eel be? I have no idea. That is such a specific question.
Biologist or someone.
Sudden. I'm sorry.
Should ask a biologist or someone like that.
Yeah, I wish I knew, but I
That
know
is
that
far too specific a question for us to answer.
electric eels generate their current through specialized muscle organs that I don't remember the specifics of how they work, so I had to do a little research on that. I can already tell you a single microbe would be incapable of generating a charge capable of doing anything significant.
And finally, last question in the thread. There is an Easter egg reference to Spore. There's you can come across it in the game currently. But what about Adapt or Elysian Eclipse? And we're planning to add more Easter eggs of the same type, just random things spawned in the environment. So I see no reason why we couldn't add Easter eggs for those as well. It's just a matter of having the right people to model them, I guess. And that's the end of the thread on the forums. So that's all of the priority questions. So unless anyone has any other ideas, shall we transition to answering questions from the live chat?
Forum questions, and this last question really reminds me that I think next time something like max 3 questions per person will
Yes,
be
I think
something.
that's a good idea.
I think for the VIP patrons they can ask a bit more questions, but for the general audience, I think about 3 per person would be better.
I certainly agree.
Okay, let's jump back to the different view on the stream.
So has anyone been keeping track of questions from the chat? Because I certainly haven't.
I have every question that's been asked since the very beginning.
Of the universe?
Since the very beginning of time.
God, there's so much I want to ask you.
It's just about 10 questions in total.
Any jumping out at you as interesting ones to answer first?
Well, let's see here. Gigantism. 0 player gain. Yeah, so Spartan Creeper Will has asked, would there be an option for a 0 player game where you just don't do anything and see how the world develops? I would say probably. There's been some demand for a sort of just an observation mode.
You can almost get to that point already with a couple of mods.
Yeah.
So there's a couple on the Steam Workshop for AI-controlled player cell and random mutations.
Yeah, one of those is actually being broken for a couple of releases. I think I'll fix it maybe this release. So there's a working set of example mods again.
The only thing you'd need to do with that one is press the buttons to go to the editor and finish in the editor, really.
Yeah. But a full-on observer mode is something that I kind of also want, but just not very high priority for me because I don't think that many people will find it more interesting than new prototypes.
Do we have another question?
Oh, did you already finish with the
Yes.
Okay. Well, next up, let's see. Mr. Thimatuis asked, "Is it possible to turn your micro in the gamepad controls?" And I don't think it is currently.
Not really. If you have a PlayStation 5 or 4 controller, you can use the touchpad as a mouse. I kind of play Drive that way, and it kind of works. Not very well, but for now that's the best controller support you can get in the game.
Alright. Lucas Will has asked, "Will there be something like gigantism? And can you edit the water surface level, etc.?" That's like 2 questions at once, but alright. I did mention that I would like to see certain like individual traits be expressed in individuals, so maybe you would occasionally see a abnormally large individual with your species if you do have the variation in it. As for water surface level, that probably has more to do with terrain generation and world specifics. So
Yeah, we really don't need an editor for that before the ascension stage, so we can think about that for quite a while still before deciding.
alrighty. A dude who has asked, could it be possible to increase your mutation points by, say, increasing your genetic instability, more points at the cost of unwanted mutations that may have to spend your points to remove? I would say no to just blatantly increasing in mutation points, but reductions in cost or increases in cost are a potentiality.
Yeah,
I
that's
do like
been suggested before that you could get like random mutations or something like that, but
I do kind of like the idea of if you're a radio trough and you get energy from radioactive sources that you can just get random organelles added to you.
oh yeah,
I
someone
quite like that.
did mention that. Now that you say that, I recall someone saying that in that discussion that maybe radiotrophs would get like extra mutation rate.
I'm always wary of the reduction of player agency, though.
Mm. I mean, considering it's just one option for, it there's lots of other gameplay game builds you could take that wouldn't have that. It's just if you wanted to go down that path and have random mutations, then that would be available to you.
Alright, the Mega Piplup 999 has asked, "Is the development team working on one stage at a time, or are there multiple teams working on different stages?" For the most part, we're all working on the same stage, with the exception of Hirlanen, who has been making prototypes of later stages. Even he's focused on the micro stage when it comes to
Yeah,
fixing
quite a lot
defects.
because when I see a bunch of people complain about some bug for multiple releases, it just starts to it's the back of your mind and you just have to fix it at some point. So I can't fully switch focus to the other stages either. But I would welcome if someone else also wants to like do some work on the prototypes. They can help me out with them.
All right, Mike Gilhood, Mike Gilhood has asked, "What's the name of the rock?" in reference to the macroscopic stage rock.
Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson.
Maybe we add an Easter egg where every now and then it randomly turns into him. I don't know. What should we name the rock?
I think they are already named like iron_5 or big rock or something like that.
Big rock sounds good.
Big rock. Here we go.
Small iron chunk, big iron chunk. Those are the names of the rocks.
Alrighty. Next up, Walrowski Rakieti.
You're really having trouble with the names today, aren't you?
Just a little bit. Has asked, will it be possible to choose more complex tissue chemical composition? I'm assuming they're talking about things like sulfur-based and silica-based and etc. And probably not in a while, if ever.
Yeah, maybe we'll add like silica-based life at some point. Maybe at the same time, if we add a abiogenesis zeroth stage to the game, then it might make sense because you would have some gameplay to decide which you choose.
And this would all come under non-Lork because we don't have any examples of
Yeah.
silicon-based life.
Yeah,
in
and
real life.
I think playing the zeroth stage should always be like optional. So in the new game options, it would have some kind of selection, either checkbox or drop down to select between states 0 or 1 to begin the game.
Person has asked, do you guys have a rough estimate for a release date for 6.0? I'm assuming they meant to ask 0.6.0, but
I mean they could have asked actually 6.0, so
Yeah,
okay.
if you mean 6.0, then that's the industrial stage. So
Let's see, some micro,
2050.
macroscopic, aware.
yeah, many decades until that.
Okay, yeah, it would be that tribal to civilization stage.
Yeah, but 0.6.0 we do actually have a fixed date for, I assume.
Well, relatively fixed. So first week of December. I think 3rd is the Saturday then, so I think that's what we'll aim for, and we'll make that if there's no reason to delay the release.
Alright. Next up, Mean Boy has asked, how long until we have to choose a normative ethical framework to choose what cells to eat? Honestly, go
I
ahead.
think this is a reference to one of my videos, so we'll just ignore this one.
Alrighty then.
Well, if we add the cannibalism feature, we'll need some kind of decision on how much other members of your species will try to eat the player, or will impact your population from trying to eat each other. But they probably can't ponder the ethics the cells themselves.
I don't know, now I kind of want a slider in the editor that's like from ethical to unethical.
Yeah,
that's probably going to end badly, isn't it?
I mean, one suggestion was that you would have slider from no cannibalism to full cannibalism, and then you could like pick how much you want.
Crank it all the way to 0, baby.
Full cannibalism.
Alrighty. Walrowski Rakiety, I have practiced, has asked how the digestive system would be made. You know, Nick the how do you say his name? Just the Nick? Anyway, Nick has been talking about the metabolism of macroscopic organisms lately. So, for what I can understand, we'll probably have you just design some digestive tissue, and from there you'll probably be able to make a stomach organ, assuming we have organ editing. To such specifics, it's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, I don't have much of an opinion on this because it seems like quite a complicated thing that I don't want to think about yet.
Another for the to-do list.
The eternal to-do list.
It only keeps growing. All right. Well, if anybody has nothing to add to that, Aimzilla899 Will has asked, or wait, no, there was supposed to be space there. Has asked, will you be able to use a hydrothermal vest to, anyway, just moving on.
Did you actually know that's what they said, or were you jumping into
I
that
forgot
unaware?
that I put that on a list.
You got hydrothermical sniped.
Anyhow, Sheen has asked, what about cellular internal parasitism? And probably going to be the same answer we had, is just regular internal parasitism. Probably going to be a bit of a back burner feature, if any.
Yeah, it will need much different gameplay, so it's not on the primary path from start of the game to the finish of the game.
All right. Person has asked, can we have creatures that spend almost their entire lives in the air, like in a planet with an incredibly buoyant atmosphere? And I'd say I would think so,
I
so
hope
long as
so.
you're able to keep in the air.
Yeah, I like that, but it's one of those things. Yeah, it's far enough in the future that we can say we want it or we don't, and it doesn't have any bearing on whether it will actually happen.
I feel like it wouldn't be too complicated so long as we have the mechanisms of flight. Maybe. Maybe. Alright, next up, the Toxic Panther is asked, when World Generation is added, could we get an Easter egg seed for playing on the blank Earth? That might be a little complicated. We'd have to design a mechanism for actually designing a seed. Is that possible?
Well, we already have that. You can just type in the seed number.
Yeah, but
in
then
the
we'd
media
have to...
But actually having a seed correspond to a particular setup instead of just randomly generating it, that would be more difficult.
Well, we need to either crowdsource people looking for that kind of thing, or we'd need some kind of automated seed testing algorithm that might have to run for 100 hours to find a suitable
Or just
thing.
hard code it.
Yeah, that's also possible. But then instead of a seed, it probably should be like in the map type drop down next to classic.
Yeah.
Alright, and then we have the Enter Now. When are you guys going to hire people to work on the game? I can see the game doing very good on Steam already. We've already hired Hero Lane in here, actually.
Yeah, I'm currently working part-time and planning to switch to full-time starting next year.
And then hopefully if we get more funding, I can do the plug for the funding. Yes. This game is available for free if you want to get it for free, but if you want to support the developers and pay for part-time and hopefully full-time work for Hero Lane and potentially other developers in future, you can get the game on Steam for a small price. I think it's what, like $5 or
It is currently $5, yes, in USD.
Yes, or if you want to contribute more, we have a Patreon with various benefits for higher tiers, such as being able to ask priority questions for streams like this one. And there we go. That was my mandated funding announcement voice. There we go.
Very very good salesmanship.
It is done. What was the question? Oh yeah, are we hiring people? Yeah. So answer is yes. Currently, Hero Lane part-time. Hopefully Hero Lane full-time. Hopefully more people in future if we have the financial stability for that, which currently we do not.
Yeah, the sales are pretty much a roller coaster based on how many YouTube videos we get. Also,
if you know big YouTubers, go out and tell them to play the game. Right.
yeah, that helps a ton. Also, one thing to consider is that, for example, Wikipedia thinks based on expert advice that they should have expenses covered for 2 years at all times. So well, we aren't quite there yet, but I still think I can dare to work full time even without that much of a buffer. But we are pretty far away from having a ton of money to hire a bunch of people and keep those people around long enough to actually make some real progress on the game. Because if we just have one person or multiple people hired for 6 months, and it takes like up to a month for a new programmer to become pretty efficient at their new job, then it's basically 1/6 of the money wasted already, kind of. And then at the end of those 6 months, then those developers will need to find other jobs, and then they'll disappear. So I think slow, steady growth really is the much safer option for Thrive's future, rather than trying to spend all of the money we have now.
Do we have any further questions from the chat?
I'm not that sorry. I just kind of started staring out into space. Thinny G has asked, how modular will World Gen be? I assume that means just like how many settings we might have and etc.
I don't really know what they mean by modular in this context, but the hope is that there'll be quite a few settings that you can add. I think we've got concepts somewhere where you can like change the number of stars that your planet has, then change the general temperature or whatever. So there's lots of options.
All right, now the last question in the list by Zondi Kanapa. Are you interested in narration voiceovers by Arthur C. Clarke or Richard Feynman voice models for free? Question mark.
I feel like that would open us up to some very angry lawsuits if we were to put AI-generated Richard Feynman or Arthur C. Clarke.
Especially without proper permission.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I think we've just had a new developer join.
Oh, what do you look at it is?
Hello.
It's Mike Zonathan.
Yeah, I just came for the very last question because I felt like it. No, sorry for the very huge delay. Was pretty busy today. Whatever. Go ahead. Backlead, please.
That's all right. Yeah, we'll take as many developers as we can get for any period of the stream. So yes, in answer to that question, no, we are not interested in voiceovers. We have been considering hiring people to do voiceovers or whatever, but I think that's still a future question.
Yeah, we'd want some kind of proper ideas where to like really make sense of those voiceovers. Like, do we have like a new game intro video or something like that, where the narration would make sense, or what?
I kind of want like this is very much very far future, and it's probably not going to happen anyway. But I do want like someone talking to you in the tutorial a bit, maybe as an in-game character of some kind, kind of a mascot or whatever. I think that was the idea with J-Rod from many, many years ago, if anyone remembers that reference.
Nada.
No. But it would be a bit more interactive than, or well, not interactive, but more engaging than just reading the text of the tutorial as we have now. But as I said, almost certainly not going to happen.
We need to first settle on the tutorial text, because almost each release changes it. And in fact,
Yeah, that's
in
the big
fact, the
part.
next release is going to probably reword one of the tutorial texts already. So if we have voiceover, we need to be really sure that we have the final text.
Right. Is that there? Is that there? Is that it? Are we there?
Yep, that was all the questions, save for just one more that just came about, which is Zombie Kanapa asking, what about cloning your voices through in-game instructions in various languages? I, for one, feel like I would butcher every single language that there is not English.
Yeah, no offense, but you have kind of proven that today with the pronunciations of people's.
I feel very
names.
offended.
No, we would all do very badly at that, I feel. That's not a particularly good idea. I mean, Hero Leyden could do Finnish. Maxonovan could do French. But we don't.
That does raise a good point, though. How would we handle localization for voiceovers?
We'll put some kind of request out there for people to read the voice lines and the example English voice lines. Then we'd have some kind of system for people to send them to us somehow.
Yeah, well, it would be kind of complicated for to prove languages none of us masters. Like we can just go and say, oh well, it sounds convincing, but as in the end we would have no clue of what is going on.
Well,
just be talking gibberish.
Yeah, well, I mean, the same problem is with all of the community translations anyway, so I don't think having community people read the voice lines would be any different.
We can at least put the written translations into Google Translate to see what they're saying.
Kind of, but not really. Like Google won't find language-specific puns or innuendos or something like that, which people could put in.
Well, that's true, but at the same time, texts in Thrive are generally not that complicated, so they are very simple, and there is not very much that is attached to it if they're not entirely accurate anyways. For an intro, it's very different, because you want to convey a meaning and emotions, so that may be very different. Like if you want narration, that's much more complicated than just translated ammonia.
Which, yes, these are all reasons why I said this would be a very far in the future thing. But yes, I guess final call for any questions in the chat, unless we have other points that we wish to talk about, and then we will end the stream. I suppose while I'm waiting for more questions to come in, I'll do the I don't know, the corporate spiel at this point. The game Thrive is available for free via our own launcher, which you can get via our website. It's also available on Steam if you wish to pay the developers to support them. And there is, of course, our Patreon if you wish to support us more than simply buying on Steam. And we are always looking for new developers to join the team. So if you have game development skills in programming or graphic design or something related to those, then we'd be very interested in having you. Or if you're just a theorist and have knowledge of biochemistry or related matters, then those would be very helpful as well. So there are links to apply to join the team on the website. So feel free to follow those if you wish. Is there anything else? I think that's everything. One extra question has... Oh, a few extra questions have appeared in the chat, actually. How do you feel about the current state of the forums? Do we feel anything about the current state of the forums?
I'd say it's pretty good, but as the school year has started, the activity has obviously gone down a bit.
I do feel like we could use a couple more moderators.
Well, I don't think the forums really need that unless someone wants to be a forum game moderator, but our community Discord really needs more fresh blood for the moderation team.
Yes, this is. I guess that's a specific call to action. We are always looking for moderators and community managers as well, but the difficulty there is we would be more likely to promote from people who are already active and have proven themselves in the community, unless they have specific experience elsewhere.
Well, I'm afraid I have to get ready for work now, so I suppose I'll be taking a leave.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Goodbye.
Enjoy work. Bye. I'll just run through the last few questions very quickly. Will fire breathing be in the game? No idea. What about organelles that collect ammonia and phosphate faster? There is already an organelle that collects ammonia faster. And nitrogen fixation is a thing.
Also becoming huge or getting flagellum or something like that helps you hoover up clouds much faster.
I did ask if long term you want to do different types of tech to choose from, metal versus organic, for example. That feels like an enormous topic. That probably means we would just have the known technologies as they are on Earth.
I mean, if we go that route, all of the tool breeder people will jump on the underwater discussion again. So
True. Yes, we'll definitely stay
I'd like
away
to
from that.
postpone that.
How will communication be handled throughout the game? Well, in its current guise, we have signaling agents for cells to communicate to other cells, although currently that only works player to other members of their species. We need to work out if there's something the AI could do with those.
Yeah, there's also the question of how it works on the receiving hand. And right now, the AI is just doing whatever it's set to do. But of course, it doesn't work like this in real life. First, and second, it's also the player who should be affected in some way by this, be it either pure communication and information giving, or even sometimes kind of orders. But of course, that's a very sensitive topic because you don't want to force the player around. That's not a game. So if you do it, so well, complex topic. I feel.
And as you were speaking there, we have just been joined by Deus, another developer.
Hello, I'm on. I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm part of the gameplay team, and I just help with creating up concepts and balancing from time to time when a new feature is implemented.
Yes.
Sorry for a late join. I was busy this past weekend.
No, that's all right. We've had 3 developers for most of the stream, and then 2 pop up right at the end. This is how schedules work.
Oh, look at
that. Next to the final questions, could there be a separate immersion setting for those who want things like a dark screen when you have no sensory organ? There is already. Just turn off your monitor. But I don't know. More seriously, I think there are some people who would like that, but it would, of course, be up to more of them. I think
there's at least 3 pretty vocal people about that, but that would be pretty difficult to program, and remember to also always implement that for the later stages when they are added and stuff like that. So it's a big feature that would also cause pretty big maintenance burden to ensure it works correctly. So maybe
Also,
once we have all of the stages,
it could just be a mod.
or that
Also,
that as well.
a lot of work. It's a lot of work for a feature that makes gameplay worse inherently, because you can't see that much.
I mean, some people want that, and some people have also said that they want to randomly lose the game due to asteroid impacts or something like that.
I do still kind of want to put that in, though. Just you can set it to an extreme difficulty setting and have a pop-up that is saying you lost the game.
I kind of also want to have that joke in the game.
But that's much easier to add than
Yeah,
an entire immersion
yeah,
mode.
it's a really small feature.
Maybe if they reach a certain point of plant sentience as like an autotroph, then that just happens automatically. And then, or a certain point while being underwater and having sentience, that can just happen automatically as a gag or something.
Yeah, that's good. Or like the aliens visit, and instead of giving you metal working underwater, they just decide to hunt you to extinction.
It's kill you, enslave you.
I'm going to say cut off on questions from the stream now, so there are just 2 left. Any ideas on the Civ stage gameplay? Some, but not in a structured way, I presume.
Yeah. I'll say from a pure gameplay concept perspective, I doubt we'll have, I doubt we'll be competing, in terms of detail with Civilizations with other big Civ games like Civilization or, I don't know, Humankind is a new one. But a very interesting area of concept for this game to be applied is how your behavior as a species beforehand, whether you're predatory or social or anything of that nature can affect the way your society acts. So that would be an interesting area of concepts. But as Oliver said, no, not really.
Yeah, there's nothing solidified about that. And I suppose it will have to wait until a prototype at least to have better ideas. And finally, the last question I'm going to say. Most ways of starting fires require an organic material or something that was once organic. Do you have any plans to keep people from being locked out of smelting due to lack of flammable material? Well, if they're underwater, yes. I don't know about. That's a good point, actually.
I
Like,
mean,
if you're on a world that never develops trees, what do you do?
I'd say that we'll just hardcode the auto evo to make trees, because that's such a big thing that you need to have some kind of big vegetation. But recently on the community forums, people were talking about Arctic civilizations, and I think if your civilization is living on a sheet of ice, then you just need to relocate to make civilization happen, or industrialization.
Yeah. Do Inuit cultures have fire? I don't think they do.
I mean, they must do, otherwise they wouldn't keep warm. They've
Yeah,
got igloos
they do.
with fireplaces in.
Yeah. I assume to get to that point of technology, you'd have to learn how to make fire and then get to an Arctic area. But yeah, I'm sure there's ways we can work around that.
Okay, I think we've reached the end then, because the chat has descended into Smeltle the Meltle, which is always a good sign. Yeah, I thank you everyone for coming along and listening / watching. This is your reminder to go and play the new release, and go and tell us what you think of the new features, and hopefully not tell us what you think of all the new bugs. And yeah, I guess we have been the Thrive development team. Thank you very much for being with us. I don't really have anything else to say. Does anyone else have anything else to say?
Thank you very much. Give feedback on the growth rates, please. I'm interested in that.
Yes, that's a very important one.
That's probably a pretty divisive feature, so we might get some pretty loud feedback on that.
Great.
Jess, I think that's it. We can stop the stream there. Thank you, everybody, for coming along.
Bye.